Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at City of Iron 2nd Edition from Red Raven Games and designer, publisher, artist, graphic designer Ryan Lockett, which is worth mentioning over and over again. It's pretty interesting and amazing, as a matter of fact. But it's worth noting as well that City of Iron was, the first edition, was one of the very first games I ever reviewed on this channel, and I was more than happy to do so. I really enjoyed City of Iron. It's made it onto both of my top 100 lists. I can't even remember what spot, but fairly high, because it's just a great, what I would call a hybrid game, mixing Eurogame elements where you're all in this steampunk fantasy empire, and you're trying to get goods, and you're trying to buy and build buildings and conquer lands. Well, but that's the thing. The hybrid part comes in because you're actually attacking towns, going after lands, and you can steal them out from your opponent as well. So there's more interaction in the game than your usual Euro game. So it's one of the very first hybrid games of the last 5 years or so. Now, the second edition has come out, and I admit I was a bit skeptical at first because I thought the first edition was very good on its own, and it wasn't too long since it had been released. But nevertheless, I was curious. And just as like a little broad overview, basically this is streamlining a lot of the different elements from City of Iron to make it a little tighter, to improve the graphic design a bit, to make the game a little bit faster, or at least to know exactly when it's going to end. So let me go ahead and give you a brief overview of that. First thing I'm going to do is cover some of the changes, not like in incredible detail, but just to give you a broad scope of that. Then we're going to get into just an overview of the game itself for people who are new to it. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. For anyone who's completely new to City of Iron, I'll get to the main overview momentarily. First, for people who have played the first edition and just want to know the changes, I'll run through these really quickly, but not comprehensively. First off, the general art and layout of the graphic design has changed. The board has shrunk considerably, and everything is cleaner and more streamlined. There are small but noticeable changes, like the character pictures no longer being on the player boards. The turn order track is significantly easier. Just bid in order, paying more for the choice spots, but getting a bonus if you go in the back. Then, the cubes get moved back down in the same order, meaning that whoever had the first turn of the main phase last round will be bidding last for turn order this time. When the game is scored and its length have also changed. The game is exactly 7 rounds, and you will know exactly when the B and C cards are coming out, and that you'll be scoring for sure on the 3rd, 5th, and 7th rounds. Player powers have been tweaked to make them more balanced. I'm not going to go into the explicit details here. Pirates are gone, as are special towns. Some small elements like steam bots have moved over from the main game, from the expansion, Experts and Engines, which may itself get its own 2nd edition soon. Now back to the overview. In City of Iron, each player takes control of a different faction vying for supremacy in a steampunk fantasy land. You'll be either the humans of Ark, the elf thingies from Chrysaria, the hogmen of Hog, and the froggies of Om. You gain points by conquering lands, building new cities, putting buildings in those cities, and acquiring and maintaining dominance in the various goods of the land. Each player gets a player board, a starting land per their race, and a capital district. The district indicates how many buildings you may build in it, and it can eventually be improved into an imperial district. You may eventually be able to build slums and industry as well. These districts will also let you draw more cards of a specific type per their symbols. The land also tells you which types of buildings you gain based on the icons at the bottom, and gives you an endgame scoring bonus you can try and achieve. Each player has a deck of expert cards, split into military and citizenry. These are special characters who can help you out with their powers or symbols. A few of the cards in each player's deck are unique to them with their own unique powers. For instance, the Chrysaarians have a character who can get science cheaply and then sell science back for gold. Each player has a starting deck for each type, such as Scholar and Cartographer, and Soldier and Captain. Grab these and put them face down on your board in any order of your choice in the appropriate spots. The other cards go into your buy pool. You can purchase these later. Experts are activated with money or symbols from other cards in order to use their powers. Alternatively, you can just use them for their symbols, like guns, hammers, or distance. City of Iron has some light deck building elements. When you are eligible to draw cards, you draw them from the appropriate deck, either citizenry or military. There's no hand limit, and you hold on to cards until you use them. But if you need to draw and there are no more cards, you pick up your discard pile without changing the order of the cards and flip it back face down to constitute your deck. The building cards are split into A, B, and C decks, and you'll go through them in that order. Fill up the card row based on the number of players. Lay out the distant lands for purchase later, and separate the town cards by ranks 1, 2, and 3. Money and science, the two currencies of the game, are kept in piles near the board. Get your starting income, and then you're ready to begin. Rounds of City of Iron go like this. In the spring phase, you bid for turn order just as I described earlier. In the summer, players take their actions. Each player gets a total of 3 actions, and everyone takes 1 action at a time before moving on to the next player. There's a gauge on the board to keep track of what action everyone should be on. The actions you can take are 1. The build action. If you have the money, science, or land icons necessary, you can buy a building from the lineup and put it into your district, if you have room. This may immediately increase your income as well as also give you goods. If so, place a cube on the appropriate track on the right amount. Buildings may also give you points, extra science, extra card drawing, and so on. When you take a card, leave the empty space as is. Number 2, the draw action. Instead of waiting for potential end of turn draws, you can spend 1 action to draw from either of your decks. Number 3, the research action. Simply gain 1 science token by spending 4 coins. Number 4, expert actions. You can use the special ability of an expert. Other cards can be played for symbols to fuel that ability. A card played for its ability cannot also be used for its symbols. It's important to note that one of these experts, the mayor, can add new slums or industries to your lands, and another, the explorer, can discover and acquire new distant lands. She may potentially need an airship or a sea ship, but either way, if she has enough distance points to fuel her actions, she can simply take one of the land boards. This gives you more land symbols, another bonus point condition, and another place to build districts. Next is the tax action. You simply take 1 coin from the stock. And finally, you have the attack town action. If you have enough guns and distance points, you can fight the top card off of one of the stacks of towns. If you have enough, you flip the card to its conquered side and take it. Again, this will increase your income and give you more goods. These do not count for being in one of your districts. But beware, other players can conquer them out from under you. After the summer action phase is autumn. First, get rid of old buildings in the lineup. The 4 leftmost cards, regardless of space, are wiped out. The remaining cards are moved to the left, and the rest of the lineup is replaced. As you dig through the different lettered buildings, the goods, costs, and land symbols required for the buildings will change. Next, if it's the 3rd, 5th, or 7th rounds, you score points based on your influence on all of the good tracks. First and second place will get the indicated amount of points, and some of the rarer goods have even more bonus points if you reach a certain level on each track. Each player also gets a free science when this scoring occurs. Next, collect your coins and science based on your income and any bonuses from your buildings. You also get a coin bonus if you dominate any of the good tracks. Finally, draw citizen and military cards based on your card draw icons, and then advance the round counter. However, you still have one last phase before the new round officially begins. In the winter phase, you purchase more cards from your buy pool. Look through the entire deck and choose the cards you want and can afford. Players select the cards in secret, then simultaneously reveal and pay. Cards purchased in this way go immediately into hand. Then, you're ready to start all over in a new round. The game ends after round 7, you do one last scoring, including your land boards, and whoever has the most points is the winner. Now, on to my final thoughts. Now, as I said in my intro, I'm a bit skeptical as to whether or not this second edition was strictly necessary because the first was so good, other than maybe some little quibbles with it, but doesn't every game have that, especially a game as massive as City of Iron? But it's Ryan Luck, it's right to do that, and if people want to buy it, then obviously, it's a good thing to have out there. And I will say that he's made a bit of a believer out of me, because while I don't think that this game, the second edition, is going to change anyone's mind about City of Iron, meaning if you hated the first edition, you're still going to hate this one. If you really loved the first edition, you're still going to love it with this one, but I appreciate the streamlining that went into this game to make it just a little bit faster, to make it just a little less clunky, a little easier to explain. Even though I went over all of at least most of the details of what has changed, it's hard for me to pinpoint, like, what's the thing that made this edition work just a little bit better for me. It's just that overall, in the couple of games of this I've played with the second edition, it just seems faster. It just seems like it's the things are kind of humming along a little bit better. I can't blame it just on the turn order track, although that helps. I can't blame it just on the round order, although that's definitely great as well, knowing when things are going to happen, knowing that you're going to be playing for 7 rounds. But all these little changes and cutting out some of the chafe, like the whole pirate thing, which I know some people liked, but I think all of these different things together just make the game just a little bit better and well enough. Now, and let me just go over, for people who are new to the game, some people might be watching this review without having watched my first review or watching any review of City of Iron. I doubt that, but if that's the case, what do I like about the game in general? Well, as I mentioned in my intro, it's like a hybrid of these Euro and American Ameritrash elements, which I really enjoy. I love the little bit of deck building in this game that is very unique, how it's like... It's a struggle to be drawing those cards sometimes to get the cards that you want, but when you do, and you do amazing things with them. And the whole aspect of how you can determine to a degree how the cards go into your discard pile, and then how you just flip the deck right over. I always found that very interesting, if a bit gimmicky. But it's neat, and I like it. I like all the different options that you have. You can go for these different buildings and get goods. You can try to just be warlike and conquer as many towns and go for distant lands as much as you can to get those bonus points as well. You can improve your districts as much as you possibly can, which I felt I think they tweaked that a bit in this one too, and I liked how that worked out too. And also, back to the card building and how you can cater your deck to how you want it to be, and it helps you go down one of those paths that you want to go down. And the fact that every player, while you're mostly playing the game the same way, you have these little faction powers, the cards that are different from everyone else, that give you just that little bit of difference from the other players to make it feel like when you play as a different faction, you're having a different game experience while still having the same options. You don't feel railroaded to go down a certain path just because you're playing as the Cressarians. You can do other things. I really appreciate that. And, I mean, look, the game is beautiful. If you want to talk about the components, I think it looks even better now. I mean, there's some artwork that was taken off of the boards, but I was like the player board's like, it's kind of weird. But I think that the main player board itself, even though it's smaller, looks a lot better. And the game just looks a lot more slick. Even the cover, I think I like a bit more, for what that's worth. I know that's very superficial. But overall, I just think that this is a really great edition of it. And City of Iron, which regardless of what edition you play, I think is fantastic. So I guess the $1 million question is, if you have the first edition and you're like, oh man, I love the game, but do I really have to plunk down the money for a second edition? That depends. A lot of the changes in the second edition are very, very easy to implement with your first edition copy. Some of the things like the turn order track, you just decide, hey, it's going to work like this now. You just ignore some of the spots on the board. For like the player cards and abilities, that's a little more difficult. You might just have to sleeve the cards and then put little paste ups in there. And some other aspects of the game, you just have to say, like, everyone remember, this is how it works, not like this, like how the cards come out in the turn order track, things like that. Some of the buildings, I don't know how different they are or how many new ones are. Again, some cards were, like the Steambot, were taken over from the Experts in Engine expansion and put in, so I'd say it's a little bit difficult to just rig up your copy of the game. I don't think there was ever an upgrade pack put out. But if you don't really care about those changes, which aren't all that drastic, I think you're still fine with the first edition. But I do like the second edition. So I don't think it's a must-buy. I don't think this invalidates your copy whatsoever if you're really set on keeping it. But if you're like, maybe I'll check that out, I think that you should. Because I think it's a great game. And I think he's done a really good job making it a worthwhile purchase, even though, again, I was skeptical at first. That is the City of Iron 2nd Edition from Red Raven Games. I recommended the first edition. I highly recommend the second edition as well.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.